Right, earlier this year, a state circuit court in Missouri granted a motion to force a Planned Parenthood chapter in that state to turn over documents regarding gender interventions performed on minors. After Planned Parenthood stonewalled the release of the records, a circuit judge issued a second decision last week confirming that Planned Parenthood must turn over most documents under Missouri's Merchandising Practices Act. Now, given the tactics that Planned Parenthood has used to avoid releasing these files, what does that tell us that this organization is trying to hide when it comes to these gender transition surgeries and drugs that they're giving to minors, oftentimes without parental consent? Joining me now to discuss this is Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, who is the one who succeeded in court. Andrew, Attorney General Bailey, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
All right. So, I mean, they're stonewalling. They were told to do this. They didn't do it. You had to go back to court. What are they hiding?
Well, I think that's exactly what we're trying to answer. You know, we know that the other clinics in the state of Missouri have a very poor history of informing parents about the dangers and the negative consequences associated with these treatments. You know, prescription of life-altering, powerful puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones when there are zero FDA approvals for use of those medications in the treatment of gender dysphoria, or denial of certain patients' access to mental health assessments and traditional forms of mental health treatment like psychology or psychiatry. You know, we anticipate that there's going to be negative findings from our investigation into Planned Parenthood. Certainly, the behavior of Planned Parenthood in the abortion context is to consistently place their desire to terminate and end human life ahead of the health and welfare of patients. And we believe that that's going to be true in this context, the transgender context as well. But we're going to keep digging and root out this enterprise and hold any wrongdoers accountable.
Is part of their rationale for stonewalling, or at least their claim justification, is that these records are covered by HIPAA and they can't release this information to you?
That's exactly the excuse they used. And what's most troubling about it is that several of the clinics had initially agreed to turn over the records we had subpoenaed. There were other clinics involved in addition to Planned Parenthood. And then they suddenly changed course after they had communicated with agents of the federal government. We have reason to believe that the Biden administration intervened with some of these agencies and asked them to look at HIPAA as an excuse to not have to turn over the records.
Wait a minute. So the Biden administration facilitating potentially illegal activity by Planned Parenthood by giving them the rationale to justify not turning over records based upon a court order to turn this information over to a government investigation. Did I get it right?
Yeah, I mean, we have every reason to believe that that's true, Tony, and that's really disconcerting. At the end of the day, most states have a law similar to the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act, which grants attorney generals broad authority to protect consumers. And at the end of the day, consumers in the healthcare market are purchasing goods and services just like in most other markets. And so the authority of the attorney general's office in statute applies in this context, regardless of what Joe Biden may think. And there are clear exceptions in HIPAA for state investigative authorities like the one we're conducting here.
So if you were to follow the logic, if in fact this is what the Biden administration is suggesting be done by Planned Parenthood, this would mean like Planned Parenthood and other nefarious organizations like that could operate without any oversight in the state. I mean, who's going to hold them accountable? Certainly not the federal government.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If Joe Biden is allowed to shield these bad actors, they can harm children in the state of Missouri without consequence. That's not a world that we can live in. The state has a role to play here. The state has broad police authority, and the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act was, enacted pursuant to the constitutional authority reserved to the states and the people of the states under the 10th Amendment.
So I know this is just one piece of your investigation because you've been at this for some time now. Can you give us a sense of the status of your investigation into these gender transition treatments for minors?
Yeah, look, I can tell you that the evidence that we have uncovered through our investigation into numerous clinics operating in the shadows across the state of Missouri is consistent with the evidence that came forth when the whistleblower swore out an affidavit making very specific and credible accusations about a clinic in St. Louis in February of 2023. And everything that I'm saying today has been corroborated by the media. Now, they have not emphasized those stories because it's an inconvenient narrative. But at the end of the day, what it shows is that there's no medicine or science to back up these life-altering procedures, and that these clinics raced towards these procedures to achieve a social objective, regardless of the parents' lack of knowledge about how dangerous or life-altering the consequences of the procedures were, and regardless of the fact that there were no clinical assessments done on the front end to determine whether the children would be better suited receiving more traditional mental health services, and certainly no tracking of the negative outcomes from these dangerous medications and irreversible procedures.
Well, that would be consistent with the report that came out recently from the United Kingdom, the case report that showed almost identically what you've just described there. Attorney General Andrew Bailey, always great to see you. Thank you so much for fighting the good fight on behalf of families there in Missouri, and congratulations on your victory there in court.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you having me on.